the watch along. I hope everybody's ready. I'm going to do a countdown, and then I'm just going to hit play. And so you won't hear my desktop at all. The only thing you'll hear is my voice. And feel free to adjust the Twitch volume if I'm too loud for you, if I'm interrupting too much. And yeah, let's enjoy. Quick, before I get into it, my number one concern is them either having too much, because they just try to fit too much into the story at once, and the Doctor. That's the other thing I'm most concerned about. Now, I haven't seen anything so far, and also, please don't spoil for things for others. Let's all have a good time and enjoy. And yeah. All right. I am going to start the countdown now. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So it looks like they're expanding that opening scene from the game. By the way, I love the audio channels. She says the word doctor a little bit too much. It is accurate, though. You are absolutely right. That is not an easy angle to draw. Yeah. If you want to kill yourself with a drinking game, easy mode, every time Amia says doctor. Hard mode, every time anyone says doctor. I do not encourage drinking, by the way. I don't drink myself, but you're free to do whatever you want. Okay, so we do have a pretty decent view of the Doctor's face right away. Emulate the amnesia. Well, how do you think he got the amnesia in the first place? I think the anime is the first time we've seen anything remotely of the Doctor's face whatsoever. Visually, the environments are really good. I love the light and shadow work that they've done. They've done an excellent job with that in particular. The Doctor's breathing is already giving me the impression the voice is not going to be good. The casting of it. It sounds like young anime protagonist. Now, I didn't read very much of the story. Did Doctor get carried by Ace in the story like this? Wait, that's not Ace? Oh, I'm confusing him with someone else, yeah. Doberman, way too OP in the anime compared to in the game. The pacing's a bit too slow, to be honest. You want to start with something big and exciting for this kind of show. Yeah, see, it's already going into like exposition of the strategy, and you know, it's like trying to introduce them. Just have them do it and then talk about it later. It's a much better way of doing it. Yeah, we are almost 7 minutes in. Well, Ashen, I can very much encourage drinking water. Yeah, they've definitely gone for like an androgynous voice, which I do not like. They should have picked a character, like a voice, a personality, like just gone for something concrete. Even if it's something I disagreed with, it still would have been better than just trying to stay in the middle. Yeah, he just needs some good H2O and he'll be right. See, my big concern with the Doctor is not so much the voice. I don't like the voice, but the writing and the character, that's the most important part. And I fear that the voice direction will lead to a very bland character. Yeah. I feel like the Doctor is just going to be a background character. That's my biggest concern. He is way stronger in the anime as well. When you have to pull that guy for integrated strategies, it's not that great. I'm not sure he could 1v1 one of those grunts. There's Ace. All right, here comes the real hero. Yeah, not great for my tinnitus, but all good. Vicious Dreams, you're absolutely right. That was a hidden Easter egg for the Rainbow Six rerun. They accidentally play the DMC music as the outro. That's pretty messed up. There's just dead people in this house. They must be all over the city. It does establish tone very well for the world, that's true. And also how used to it everybody is. So we're a little over 12 minutes in. This point should have been about 3 minutes in. It's Arknights time. Yeah, see, again, it's doing more exposition when it really shouldn't be. The exposition isn't the problem. It's the pacing of it. We'll talk about it more after the episode, because there's a bit too much to say on the fly. Is Armia really supposed to be the leader? because she's certainly not qualified. So, where are our drones in game? They're always annoying us. Where are our drones? Please. He's like, my sanity's capped. Quick. Gotta log in, do my dailies. I mean, it's totally what I would do. Activate Melantha skill. And the true hero saves the day. They really got to throw you a cute little Ursus kid in episode 1. Oh, hang on. How come that's still playing? The bear? I swear we've seen an NPC like that in one of the... Was it one of the Tallulah stories? Time to bully. Bullying is promoted by Arknights. What's going on right now is very clunky exposition. And the amnesia is being used as an excuse for it, which is unfortunate. Yeah, one of the weakest elements of the Arknights story is the amnesia component, which we'll talk about in a moment, for why amnesia is generally not recommended for stories. Amia, you're too sweet for this world. The order battle completed. Quick, start the next order battle. While they're not looking. Okay. And so that's that. End of the episode. All right. Let me mute that. Just put on some background music. Just there's something.
This is the place.
Thank you for the sub. I hate your pancreas. Thank you for the sub with the Prime Gaming. Much appreciated. Okay. Right. So, first impressions, immediately, and we already knew this from the trailer, the visuals are great. Much better than you typically get for video game adaptations. If you don't have much experience with video game to anime adaptations, the production quality is like bottom of the barrel quite often. Because they know that fans of it will watch it anyway, no matter how shit it is. And so they just end up doing such a half-assed job. And then on top of that, there's quite a few games that get adaptations where we take real effort to do a proper adaptation. Because the game style itself just does not lend itself to something that's very story-focused. Or it's a game with like multiple story choices, like, you know, if you think of your typical visual novel where there's like 5 different paths or something and they try to put it all into one and it just doesn't work. You've got a lot of crap like that. But yeah, so the visuals, the animation, lighting, shadows, all that, I really have no complaints. No complaints. The characters look great. Visually, no problems. Music, so far we haven't heard anything particularly outstanding, but it was all very solid. I think the biggest issues were with pacing and exposition. And I alluded to this earlier, but let's talk about what makes great... oh, and the Doctor as well. But the Doctor, you know, it's a bit too early to say just yet, but there's the potential for the Doctor to be a big problem with the show. So let's talk about what makes good exposition and good pacing, especially in a first episode. Because... and we'll also talk about the amnesia and why you can have it in a story, but why it's not recommended and how you can do it properly. Because for those, if you recall, if you haven't seen the Jason Bourne movies, that's an amnesia plot, and that one's done really well. So it's definitely possible. So with exposition like that, think about when they're in the shack, where in the apartment where there's the dead bodies, and they're basically just talking about the situation. They're just explaining the situation. You don't need that. You just do the action. In fact, you could start with them trying to help the Doctor, you know, and he gets up and he goes, "I can walk on my own." You could start from that point, and you would not miss anything. There'd be no missing story or character development whatsoever. The episode could literally start at that point, because everything is then repeated through the showing. So they're explaining how dangerous the situation and how much trouble they're in, and then we literally see it happen. As Payak00 has pointed out, it is the classic writing guideline of show don't tell. Now, you don't want everything to be showing, because showing takes more time than telling, but for the main things that you want the audience to focus on, that's where you use show, and then you just use tell to bridge the moments of showing where it's not worth doing an entire scene showing something when you can just do one sentence telling it. And so with this one, for instance, they start well, right? At the beginning, you know, they've got the whole medical procedure. The Doctor's like, you know, coming out of the fridge, and everybody's worried. That's good. That's really good showing. And then after that, they literally tell us that the very same information that we just got from the first scene. We just saw the Doctor coming out of this crazy medical situation, struggling. We don't need someone to then repeat to us that the Doctor is struggling. We can already see it. They've already shown it to us. You don't need to tell it to us again. So what they really should have done is gone from that Doctor waking up scene to immediately just have them try to escape. Then they get ambushed, and then Ace comes in to save them, because Ace is the best character and you don't want to cut any scenes with him. So you have him come in, he saves them, and then you cut to them in the apartment. You shrink all the dialogue in the apartment before the street battle. You cut that down by 75%. At this point in the episode, so the episode is 23 minutes, 40 seconds long. That point in the episode, we were what, 12 and a half minutes in? That should have been about 3 minutes in. And you could have had all the exact same amount of information conveyed in that time. Where this episode ended, that should have been about the halfway point of the episode. Yeah. Basically, as Aizen RCMP has put it, that's exactly how it should be, because all that dialogue that they've got is not adding anything useful. And then after that, there is a bit of a clunky moment, and this is a different kind of clunk, so to speak, which is when Amiya is explaining to the Doctor the whole Aripathy problem, and they're using his amnesia as an excuse for her to say this stuff so that the audience gets the information, right? Now, normally, that is done with the fish-out-of-water protagonist character. A character who is a stand-in for the audience that doesn't know anything of the world, like they're put into a strange situation, and then the mentor or the expert on the situation will then explain to them what's going on, which then allows the audience to understand what's going on. Luke Skywalker, right? He's a classic one of that. Leia, at a couple of points, has to explain some things that are going on because that's just he needs to know. But What you don't want is you don't want it to be obvious that that's happening, right? You want it to come across just that one character is talking to another character, not talking to the audience. You never ever want it to be that they're talking to the audience. Now, the worst case scenario is what they refer to as butler and maid dialogue. This is where the butler and the maid in a household are talking to each other about the family of the household and telling each other about who this family is as people, which they already know. They would not have this conversation at all in real life, but they're having the conversation in order to explain it to the audience, right? They're only having that conversation because there's an imaginary camera over their shoulder that they need to explain to. So that's the worst case, where there isn't even an excuse to have that conversation. Then what they did here is probably the second worst case that you can have, though it's nowhere near as bad as the first, because at least there's an attempt here. But what you could still do is you could just have it done through showing. You could just have somebody's erypathy cause a problem, and then we get to see the effects of erypathy. And there's the Ursus woman who, even though she's been saved by these people, she tells them to get lost, and then she leaves because she doesn't want to get infected. That is a perfect example of showing. That is exactly what you need to do. You have a character who's just been rescued, and then they treat you like a disease. And that really puts into the mind of the audience just how bad erypathy is, because people are so worried about getting infected. That is precisely what is showing. With what the Ursus woman did, that is showing. What Amia then did talking to the doctor, that is telling. It is, you're just repeating the same information twice. And that's the problem with this episode in the pacing and the exposition, is half the episode is just repeating what they showed us. It shows and tells the same stuff over and over. And so you could have cut it down by about 50% and then put in a lot more stuff without losing a single bit of character development, character personality, or action, world building. Nothing would have of substance would have actually been cut. The script is not exactly the same as the game. And plus, it's an adaptation. They can do whatever they want. Rick, it would not feel rushed at all if they did this. In fact, it would feel less rushed because it would sink in purely through the showing rather than you having to try and remember people's conversations. That's the other thing about showing versus telling, is that when somebody has to tell you what's going on, you are less likely to remember it than if there's an action that shows you what's going on. So for instance, the Ursus woman rejecting Rhodes Island, that will stick with you. But Amia's explanation of Oripathy, to someone who hasn't played Arknights, they probably won't remember that after that first episode. Like they just will have no idea what was being said. But they will remember that Rhodes Island is diseased in some way and she ran away. That will stick with them. That small moment that took far less time than the massive chunk of dialogue from Amia. So it would actually feel less rushed as a result, and it will sink in a lot better. But yes, overall, I want to really emphasize this point. This adaptation is 1,000 times better than your average game to anime adaptation. If you have not seen game to anime adaptations before, you have no idea how lucky you are as an Arknights fan to get something that is actually good. Because for other games, your best expectation is that it's not total shit. So the fact that we've actually got something good over here, and this issue that we have with the pacing and the exposition is actually very common, even if it's not an adaptation. There's a lot of anime that suffer from this. Lots of anime have this issue where they just info dump and they world build way too much, And it also happens a lot in new authors when they write fantasy and sci-fi for the first time. These first couple of chapters are just so boring. But then, once you get past that bit, which frankly, most of it could have just been cut outright, you could even just skip it. Once you get past that bit, it starts to get really good. And there are some really great stories that have those very weak starts. So it could be possible that this is just, they just did this to, and they just, the writers just aren't good enough to get that really good exposition world building slick first episode. But then now they've gotten that out of the way, they can lean into the action and the characters, which is what they're strong at. That's very possible. So yeah, overall it's good. I'd say I'd probably give it about like a 7 out of 10 for a first episode of a show. It could be far, far, far worse. What they need to do, if they're going to do 3 chapters. Now, I've said I have not read much of the Arknights story. I have read early Arknights story. And this is why I have not read much of the Arknights story, because early Arknights story is incredibly boring. Really, really, really boring. Because of the pacing. There's just tons of talking. Just dialogue after dialogue after dialogue of nobody saying anything. It's just a whole lot of nothing. It doesn't even convey personality and character very much. And so at a certain point, you're just like, I don't care. I'm just going to skip. I want to play this. And so 8 episodes for 3 chapters normally would be a cause for concern. But in this case, to me, it's a good thing because it means they're going to accelerate the pace compared to the game, which is very much needed. Story overhaul, I don't think there'll be a story overhaul, but I do suspect at a certain point they will do like a good story summary, like something that you can get through in maybe 30 minutes that will cover chapter 1 to 8. That way, for people who want to get into the newest gameplay and they don't have to read all the story, because excuse me, you don't have to complete chapter 8 in order to start chapter 9, for instance. So I think at some point they will do like summaries that you can get into. Chapter 6-8, is that the 6-8? That's the Frost Nova one, right? Because if it is the Frost Nova one, I did read that. I read the first couple of chapters. I read the Frost Nova stuff, and I read a fair bit of the Tallulah stuff, and then a few of the side events I have read, but that's been a while. Yes, I intend to do a lot more lore stuff. I need to get into reading the lore again, and we'll do some exercises in, what can you learn from the good and the bad of the writing in Arknights. I definitely want to do that. The main reason not to do a story overhaul in the way that Arknights is written is that it's very easy to skip. It's not like, say, Final Fantasy XIV, right? Final Fantasy XIV, the base game, Realm Reborn, the writing for that is just shit. It is so poorly written, but it's for understandable reasons because they had to do it really, really fast, right? Basically, like a script writer was given like 2 weeks. All right, you gotta write this whole thing. We're fixing this game. The gameplay is more important. You just sit on that desk and you just type out just nonstop for 2 weeks. Whatever hits the page first, that's what we're putting in, right? Because the writing is so much better later on in that game. And so an overhaul for that is really worthwhile. But for Arknights, I don't know. You can very easily skip it. And I think a good summary will do just fine. I would rather they just focus on writing better stories in future. That's really it. And yeah, the side story writing is much better because they've got more limited time. That's another thing. Quite often, the best writing comes from constraints. You want to have some sort of limitation because usually you would think, oh, when you can do whatever you want and you can do anything, it's going to make it's boundless creativity. I can do whatever. I can do whatever I want. But quite often when you do that, it just goes all over the place. It's really unfocused. It's very scattered. So in the side stories, when they've got a lot less time, they know that they have to finish the story pretty much in that one section. They write a much more concise, much tighter story. For instance, the Rainbow Six one, that was really good. Yeah, the main story improves, I think it's around chapter 5 or 6. The writing gets significantly better, and the translation gets significantly better. The characters start speaking a lot better. In the early chapters, you can tell that it's written by somebody who doesn't really write English dialogue. Yeah, Dark Knight's Memoir, Twilight of Wallemond, the Rainbow Six one. Solid stories. You know, it's just like this one and done. You get a conclusion. And, you know, they leave a bit of a tease, usually character-related stuff for the future. Like, I want to know more about Mudrock. I want to know more about such and such. An error like Horn being a feline, that's like minor. It doesn't really matter. You know, small typos are okay. It's when you've got broader issues where characters talk like just really stilted. That's what you really want to avoid. Yeah, some sections do have too much dialogue, but that's just a Japanese visual novel problem. Japanese visual novels are not for everybody. In fact, I would say that Japanese visual novels are for a very, 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 very niche audience because they are so text heavy and unnecessarily so. Unnecessarily so. If you want a really good example, play the Steins Gate visual novel. Steins Gate is an excellent anime. It's a top tier anime, the first season. Everything after that is mediocre to garbage. It's a top tier anime. You go and play that visual novel and you will realize just how slow it is. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it just drags for the same amount of content as what you see in the anime. There is honestly no reason for visual novels to be so damn long. What they've managed to do here is a very good condensation of, very good condensing of everything so far.